Okay, good morning, everybody, and thank you for being with us. My name is Jenna Sistad, and I am the project manager for the Ocean Mammoth Health Alliance, which is our region's cancer and chronic disease prevention coalition. I'm joined here today by my colleague, Angie. I think Angie's with us. Angie, are you here? All right. RCHW community health worker Angie navigates
Yes.
resources all over both Monmouth and Ocean counties. So I just wanted to make mention if anybody needed that resource and support, she's here. Hi, Angie. I can see you now.
Hi. Okay, I couldn't do the unmute button. Good morning, everyone. I was like confused. Thank you so much, Meg, for this. And thank you, Jenna. It's really a pleasure to be able to collaborate with everyone and to be able to help out. It's been good. Thank you.
Thanks, Angie. So today we're hosting our Having Your Say presentation in collaboration with Meg Macquarie of Elixir Fund. This presentation is survivorship related and it's really geared towards the importance of creating a living will now instead of later on when your family may have to make some really important healthcare decisions on your behalf. So this is just to align your vision and your wants and needs to make sure that those things are known to your loved ones and answer some really important questions today. So we thank you, Meg, for being with us, and we know you're really an expert in this arena, so we're going to pass it over to you. And everybody, we will do some questions at the end, so if you want to keep yourself muted until Meg is completed, then we will go through Q&A. All right, Meg, thanks. It's all you.
Thank you. And I should say, if you have things that come up too, please feel free to put them in the chat as they come up.
Yeah, I'll be
Thank you.
monitoring the chat.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for joining today. And my name is Meg. I'm the executive director of the Elixir Fund. We are an organization that provides comfort care to cancer patients and their caregivers. And we're based here in New Jersey, but we have a national focus. So we are available as a resource. And just to give you a little bit of background before we dive in, just so you can understand my approach, because as Jenna said, I'm an expert, but baptism by fire. The Elixir Fund was founded in honor of my brother Kevin, who was diagnosed with advanced testicular cancer at the age of 36. And his basic life philosophy was he didn't necessarily want to live at any cost. He wanted to live his best life, and he was okay with whatever came next. So when he was initially diagnosed, he was hesitant to choose treatment. But while he was okay with what came next, he realized we weren't all going with him. So he decided to give treatment a try. At the time, he and I were both living in California, so I went through the day to day with him. And when you're faced with a diagnosis like that, it led to some general philosophical conversations about what his philosophy was. And each step of the way, any new treatment, he wanted to know exactly what the side effects could be, what the repercussions, because he had some non-negotiables for him. But when it became apparent that unfortunately he was going to pass, he was unconscious at the time, and my family was kind of left having a discussion amongst ourselves. And my mother said, we were raised Catholic. She said, do you think a viewing and a funeral? My brothers and I said, no, we don't think so. We all agreed cremation. And those decisions were made comfortably, but just kind of based on our general understanding. A few days after my brother passed, it just so happened that a mutual friend of ours said, he and I were having a discussion. I took him to treatment one day. We just had a general discussion. And he said, whatever happens after is fine. It's not for me. It's for my family. And that, not that I had been racked with anxiety over the decisions we made, but that actually brought a level of comfort, understanding we hadn't messed anything up. Since then, my family is pretty comfortable having gone through death and coming out the other side. We're pretty comfortable having these conversations, and some people find us weird and uncomfortable. But it's not that we sit down and necessarily have formal discussions, but over a decade ago, my uncle was dying. He was at home and on hospice, and my father just said, if that's me, I don't want to be I don't want to be at home. I don't want to be a burden on anyone. So please don't do that. We did our best to honor his wishes. At the same time, my oldest brother said to me, you know, for my funeral, I have a sticky note. I wrote down notes. It has moved with me to another house. I have a sticky note for what he wants for his funeral, and I'll just make sure that his wife is on board. He was not married to her at the time. So we've had these conversations. My mother was an only child and had to help her mother move out of her house, move into assisted living. And so that's led to conversations about what she wants and how, and we're in that right now. She's 82. We're in that balance of, should she stay in her home? Should she move? And this is an evolving conversation, but I'm fortunate in that she's willing to have that conversation with me. That's where this idea of helping your family and making your wishes known, reframing this conversation. And I also want to stress, this isn't about end of life. This is about living your best life. And at any point, honestly, what we're going to talk about today, anyone over the age of 18 should have in place, because at any time you may be incapable of expressing your wishes temporarily. And it's important to have these things in place. But our hesitancy to have this discussion, leads a little. And I will also admit freely that I went through this with my brother, and it still took me about 15 years to 18 years to create a living will myself, because every time you go for something at the hospital and they say, do you have a living will? And you're like, oh yeah, gotta get that. I gotta do that. How do I do that? So it's easier than you think. And we're gonna talk about that today. So I'm gonna walk you through some of this and share my screen here. Everyone can see that? Great. Okay, so again, we're approaching this this is a reframing, allowing your family to fulfill your wishes rather than feeling that they're making decisions. That's a little bit, it's hard. You want to make sure that you're honoring their wishes. So this isn't about the end of life, it's about living your best life. And again, this is throughout. Anyone over the age of 18 should have this. And I'll also say there's kind of two ways to look at this conversation. So I'll try and approach both. It is one, putting these documents in place for yourself and your healthcare wishes. But again, I'm looking at this from the perspective of, I have aging parents, or maybe you have a partner or spouse. You may be in the position where you need to make decisions for someone else. So approaching that conversation and making sure they have these documents in place as well. So there's a few key documents that you may hear about when we're talking about living will. There's your will, your last will and testament, and there's a durable power of attorney. These are two documents that must be done by a lawyer. These are legal. These are your will and testament is your property, and et cetera, how you're going to divide everything up. Your durable power of attorney is the person who's able to make those decisions. So those are legal documents that you need. What we're focusing on is from the healthcare perspective. So there's a living will. You can also think of it as a care plan. And this is for healthcare decisions. And there's also a healthcare proxy, or a healthcare power of attorney. And that's someone who can make healthcare decisions for you if you cannot speak for yourself for any reason. So let's focus on the living will. So a living will or a healthcare plan is exactly that, what you want in terms of your healthcare. And this can be as simple or as all-inclusive as you want it to be. It could be simply, I don't ever want to be on life support, or I want to be on life support as long as I can come off life support. It can include a do not resuscitate, but it can also be, one of the documents that we're going to discuss has a series of questions, and it can be, I want people to pray by my bedside. I don't. I want music if I'm in the hospital. I don't. It really is a whole continuum, and it can be simple or very detailed. And I should stress, and this will come up again, these are evolving documents. So you may feel one way today, and when you get into a healthcare situation, you may feel differently. So these are documents that can be revisited and expanded, added to, or changed. Your living will should be readily accessible. It should not be in a safety deposit box. So a copy with your doctor, possibly, a copy somewhere easily accessible at home. Paramedics used to say, put it on the side of your refrigerator or put it in your refrigerator. we're going to talk about who the healthcare proxy is. Your healthcare proxy should have a copy. This should be somewhere pretty obvious and accessible. Other people should know where it is. I have a friend who had a family friend who was one of 5 children, and their father was at the end of his life. Each of the children had a copy of his living will. Someone even carried it in their glove compartment because at any time they could be called in and they wanted to honor his wishes. How you create one, it's actually easier than you think. And I'm going to give you some resources that have samples, that have ones that you can easily just fill in questions and put your signature on it. And that's a start. A lot of times hospitals will offer you one, but I really think going online and the resources, it's really great because the way they're set up also helps to function guiding a conversation for yourself and with your family members. So there's wonderful resources out there that I will share with you. And it's as simple as filling in your wishes. You can even just write a note to yourself and sign it, and put it in your drawer, but there's some really wonderful guidelines out there. A medical power of attorney or a healthcare proxy is someone that can speak for you if you cannot speak for yourself. And they are there to honor your wishes, which is why having a living will is so great, because the medical power of attorney can simply hand over your living will. They're not making decisions for you if you already have that down and written. If you don't, then they will be making decisions for you, but these two things can work hand in hand. The importance is, again, if you ever cannot speak for yourself, your wishes will at least be translated. The hope is that they will be followed. Sometimes medical interventions happen, but at least your wishes will be represented. Who this person should be is also a critical question. Your spouse, your best friend, a family member may or may not be the best choice. You want to find the person that will follow through with your wishes. So part of what led me to the interest in putting together this presentation is that I sat through a presentation many years ago that was really wonderful. And a woman got up and spoke about the fact that her mother, when her mother was ailing, she had an illness, she said, please do not put me on a respirator at all. And she went into a health crisis, and their father was the power of attorney, and he could not follow through with that. And she wound up on a respirator. She woke up on the respirator and said, why am I here? Why did this happen? And many years later, after their mother had passed and their father was ailing, he said, now I understand, and I'm sorry that I did that. So sometimes it's difficult for our loved ones to make the decisions that we want to make for ourselves. And I've heard this a number of times too. I've had more than one friend whose mother had dementia, and the mother, right, because the mother said, please do not keep me at home, put me in a care facility. I don't want to do that. And those wishes were not honored because it was hard for the family to do. So it really needs to be someone that you can have these discussions with and that will honor your wishes. And again, setting up a healthcare proxy can be as simple as just filling in a form, identifying the person. Ideally, you tell the person that they are your healthcare proxy and will be making these decisions. Here in New Jersey, that form just needs to be witnessed. It does not need to be notarized. The rules vary based on state. I will give you a link to a healthcare proxy website, and that kind of goes through the different states as well. But it's as simple as just identifying a person and having that witnessed. A lot of the living will programs that I'll give you, the guidelines, they have that included in the living will. So for example, one I'm going to talk about is 5 wishes. And at the end of 5 wishes, you can establish who your healthcare proxy is and have that witnessed. So again, it is fairly easy. It's just taking those steps. So where can I get these documents? As I said, hospitals often have a document, but I find that these programs in particular are more robust, have more guideline questions, thought-provoking, cover a wider range of issues. 5wishes.org is a printed document, but it's also now available online. I really like this one, particularly if you're struggling having the conversation with your family, because it is set up in a series of questions. So like I said, this is the one that says, Do you want people to pray by your bedside? Yes, absolutely. No, absolutely not. Well, I do in these situations. So that's how the questions are designed. Do you want life support? Yes, absolutely. Yes, if there's a chance that I'll come off and be fine, or no, absolutely not. And there's space to kind of fill in additional considerations. That same presentation that I went to years ago about end of life, someone said, I got copies of the 5 wishes. And when my family was together, my college age children were together for a weekend, we all sat down and filled it out and talked through these questions. And as awkward as that sounds, it's actually really, I mean, I've had really great conversations, and it really helps to kind of ease some of those questions. And 5 wishes is a great way to ease into these conversations. My Directive is an online digital. They tout that, you know, they're different because they're digital, meaning that you can just call this up on your phone if you're in a healthcare crisis and need to immediately produce the advanced directive. 5 wishes is now online as well, but that's kind of a nice, I think My Directives also has, you can leave messages for your family. It's a little more involved in terms of presentation. The National Patient Advocate Foundation has put together a really great, fully thought out care plan. So you can list it. It's not only your living will, but you can list who your doctors are. You can list what medications you're on. So a lot of times that healthcare information is in our head, but not necessarily if, you know, the person, our medical power of attorney, or maybe someone joining us for a doctor's appointment. So the National Patient Advocate Foundation's plan goes above and beyond. And they also have really great information for having the conversation with your family. Prepare for Your Care is another option. And the healthcare power of attorney is simply discussing what a healthcare power of attorney is and providing you a very simple form. If that's all you want to do is establish who your healthcare power of attorney is. But as I said, 5 wishes, My Directive, a lot of those things also have the establishing the healthcare proxy or power of attorney included in the document. Extra protections. Your living will states your wishes. That's what your wishes are. And hopefully your wishes are honored. But all sorts of things can happen. Medical condition, you know, medical decisions may be made. It's a hope. So an extra protection. In New Jersey, we have something called POLST, which is Physician's Orders for Life-Saving Treatment. And this essentially works as a doctor's order. You fill this out and your doctor signs it. This is something that a lot of times, if it's a terminal illness or you have particular concerns, or, you know, this would be something that you fill out with your doctor. This should work through the continuum of care. So for example, from paramedics to rehab to doctors to nurses, anything within your continuum of care. I mention this because a friend of mine's father passed away earlier this year. He was in his early 90s. He absolutely did not want to be resuscitated. And that order was in his medical file. So if he was in rehab or the hospital, that kicked in. But he was home and he collapsed, and he was home with her mother, who has her own cognitive issues. And when the paramedics arrived, there was no one to say, he does not want to be resuscitated. There was no easily accessible document for them to look at. So they began CPR. And that was traumatic for her mom. It was hard on the family because they knew those were not his wishes. So POLST should be able to help with that and honor those wishes because it should work through the continuum of care. A HIPAA waiver. This is your health information privacy. We fill these out at the doctor's office. This identifies who can have access to your medical records. Your medical power of attorney should have, by way of being your medical power of attorney, permission, access to your medical records that can help them make the most informed decision. That should be sufficient. A HIPAA waiver, if you're at all concerned, is an extra level of protection. You can fill this out and provide whatever access you want to your medical records. So somebody could have full access to your medical records. They could have access to, you know, only voicemail, whatever. You can fill out this form as specifically as you want. And that is, again, an extra level of protection if you're concerned that your medical power of attorney may or may not have access to your records. I should step back a second and say, what I forgot to say under the medical power of attorney is you can have more than one. So you can establish a medical power of attorney or have two or three. You can have a primary, you can have a secondary, you can give them joint power. I would again encourage that you make sure if you're doing more than one, that there are two people who share your philosophy and understand that they're following through on your wishes. Additional forms that again can be included in your living will, but if you're at all concerned, you can do an additional specific form. There's the DNR, do not resuscitate, there's do not intubate, and there's do not hospitalize. These wishes can all be part of your living will, but there are additional forms if you want to be super specific. But again, these are considerations that you can include in your living will. So keep in mind, as I mentioned before, these are evolving documents. So you may have hard and fast rules. I absolutely want to be on life support. I absolutely do not want to be on life support. Things change. You have a different experience in your life and you say, oh, wait a minute, I feel differently now. For example, when my brother was going through treatment early on, he wound up on a respirator. And as he was coming off the respirator, he was not sedated fully. And he found it caused a lot of anxiety. And when he came off the respirator, he said, don't ever do that to me again. And we said, but wait, what if, you can survive? And what? So we came to an agreement. Okay, if you're going to have to go on a respirator again, we will make sure that you are fully sedated until you are entirely ready to be weaned off. And then we will do that. So again, based on experiences. Prior to that, he may have said, absolutely put me on a respirator. And then having been on one, he may have said, absolutely not. And I have an interesting case in that my oldest brother, years before this, had actually drowned and was resuscitated. So there's a whole lot going on in that. So I've had two brothers who have been a respirator. So again, hearing those personal experiences and again, having those conversations of yes, do, please don't. Keep multiple copies in easily accessible places. As we said, make sure someone else knows where your living will is and who your medical power of attorney is. These are important things. Your doctor may even want to have a copy, or doctors. So guidelines for setting up these documents. I think you really need to have a hard conversation with yourself and identify what your preferences are and really think through different options. And again, you may not be able to cover all your bases, but you can go back and add or take things out later. This is a conversation to have with your doctor as well, and to talk to your family. But I put in parentheses, talk to yourself first, because our family is a big influence on us. And, a lot of times our family's wishes affect us and our choices. So I have a friend whose mom had lung cancer and she knew she had been a smoker. She had a feeling. She avoided going to the doctor forever. And then it turned out it was lung cancer. And the family said, please, 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 you're going to do treatment, right? She said, okay. And she did 6-8 months of chemotherapy. And then they wanted to do radiation. I believe she started radiation. And then she said, I'm done. I've had enough. Treatment wasn't something she thought she wanted to do in the beginning. In the end, for her and for that family, it was a gift to the family because it gave them a little bit of time to enjoy the time with her, to appreciate the time, to see what she was going through and make that adjustment for themselves. And when she decided to stop treatment, they were all in acceptance. But I think it's really, you may have to be an advocate for yourself. So it's really important to know how you feel yourself and what your negotiables and non-negotiables are. It is also important if you want to fill out these documents for a loved one, for a parent, for a partner, that you also have a conversation with yourself first as well, because what is your philosophy? What is your approach? Is it about that you can't face that this person may die, or are you really looking at it from the perspective of what's best for them? So it really is important to kind of identify and have that possibly uncomfortable conversation with yourself about what your approach is. Questions: if you're filling out this document for yourself, or if you're setting this up with others, what's your prognosis? As I said, anyone over 18 should have these documents in place. So maybe there isn't a health crisis, but if there is something going on health-wise, what's your prognosis? So what are the things you would consider or would not consider? What are your fears? What are your fears about death and dying, but also what are your fears about medical care? Not being able to talk for yourself, or for my brother, in the end, he had a tumor on his spine that was causing paralysis. He was a musician, and to him, paralysis was kind of a non-negotiable. Others of us might say, well, you'll make an adjustment, but for him, it was not something that he wanted to go through. Trade-offs. Are there trade-offs? Are there things, that exact example? Can you make adjustments? What's your basic life philosophy? So again, what does quality of life mean to you? Are you a quality of life, or are you a quantity of life person? And there's no shame, no judgment in any of that. Some people want to live the best quality of life. Some people want to live as long as they can, no matter what. So what does that mean? If you are paralyzed, or you unable to communicate, if you're cognitively not there, is that still important to you that you extend your life as long as possible? And again, that's just who you are and how you feel, and where you sit with all this. But I think they're kind of important questions to ask yourself. And that's going to determine how much care you want. But those, again, are the exact things that may change over time. So you may decide, yes, I want to live at any cost. And then, ooh, not quite. This isn't what I was bargaining for, or I don't think I could do that in terms of my care. So additional considerations as you're putting this together. Do you want to stay at home? Do you want home health care? Is that a possibility? Are you willing to go into assisted living or continuing care, or change your living situation? Is that a possibility? What is important to you? And again, I'm looking at this from the perspective of now working with my mom on this, and her hope, again, this is where we're a little odd, her hope is to die in place, to stay in her home. But there are some physical limitations coming in. If she can no longer drive, if she can no longer, so we've got some contingencies in place for continuing care for her. Hospice versus palliative care, and I'll go through what the difference is. Are those considerations for you? What's your tolerance for pain? What is it that you feel? Do you want, that is also something to include. I'll be okay as long as you monitor my pain. Make sure that is a priority, to take care of pain, because I don't handle pain well, or I have a high tolerance for pain. I'm fine. And what have been your past experiences with other people who are ill, or who were dying? That definitely informs our decision making. And I've been through that as well. After my brother died, there was a woman that I worked with professionally who was a volunteer at a hospital, and her husband had died of cancer. She had no children. Her friends were taking care of her, and she was okay. She was ready to go. So she had done hospice with her husband and knew about the benefits of that for her. So that was all something that was built in to her care plan. So palliative care versus hospice, there may or may not be an option depending on where you're being treated, but palliative care is kind of being extended. So palliative care is focused on patients relieving their pain and their symptoms so that they can live with a better quality of life. I'm of the philosophy that palliative care starts at the beginning of your treatment and should continue throughout. I don't think of palliative care as end of life care. Palliative care to me is comfort care. A lot of times this is used as a euphemism to gently let you know. That's what happened with us, with my brother. We gently let you know that the end is near. I think of palliative care, that's the foundation of the Elixir Fund, is that your comfort should be priority throughout the entire process, throughout your life. So palliative care has a little more medical intervention available to it versus hospice care. So hospice care is for those who are seriously ill and approaching the end of life. Typically, this kicks in if you have a life expectancy of less than 6 months. Hospice care can be brought into the home. Sometimes it's within the medical facility. Sometimes you may have to go to a hospice facility. But you usually choose hospice when you prefer to stop treatment. So a lot of times we associate this more with end of life. However, that is not to say that people can't go on and off hospice care, which is exactly what happened with my grandmother. My grandmother was in assisted living. She had dementia. She was put on hospice care. And after about 6 months, they said, okay, enough. We're going to take her off. But hospice care, and I can't speak enough to palliative care and hospice care. So I know people tend to be fearful of these things because of the end of life. But those who choose hospice care wind up having just the reports that we hear, the acceptance, the peace, the comfort is really a high priority. And hospice workers are some pretty amazing heroes, I think, in my life. So having this conversation with your family, again, remember that I'm saying this to you as someone who has no problem having this conversation with my family. And I recognize that that is not the case for everyone. So as I said, talk to yourself first, or maybe talk with a counselor, your doctor, other professional. I think it's really important to sit with yourself and really examine how you feel. What's your philosophy on death and dying? Or it's not just death and dying, healthcare. What are the negotiables? What are the non-negotiables? There are really wonderful resources, as I said, and I'll give you a few others that can help guide the conversation. I think 5 wishes is a very wonderful first step to dip your toe in if you have people that are really resistant to having the conversation. The Patient Advocate Foundation program as well has a lot of resources. I think it's important to recognize this may not be a one-time conversation. So particularly if you're a parent trying to talk to your child about the fact that you need to put these things in place for yourself, that may be difficult. Some people are really resistant to the conversation. It makes them uncomfortable, but it's important. And it's important to share that these are your wishes and that you're doing this so that they don't have to make healthcare decisions. And I think if you can approach it from that perspective, it really is. It's not about putting the decisions on you. It's about expressing my wishes. So you're simply carrying out my wishes. I have a friend whose mother had dementia. I think their father, who was older, really had trouble, wanted to keep her at home. It was a lot for the family. The mother had expressed her wishes, but then particularly when her mother passed and her father was the only one left. Both times they had everything on paper. And my friend said, I never felt like I was making decisions for my parents. I was simply honoring what they wanted. Additional resources to have these conversations. The Hereafter Partners has a wonderful video presentation. The Conversation Project is all about having this conversation. And SamaritanNJ.org has some great resources that I have found very helpful. I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to stop talking and take your question. Anyone have any questions?
Thank you, Meg. I definitely have a few questions that I'll hold. I'll let the folks that are joining start us off. So it's a manageable group. If anyone would like to come off mute and ask Meg a question about her presentation. I know it can seem like maybe an overwhelming or a heavy topic if you're not doing this all day, every day. So just know that this is a safe space.
Hi, Meg. This is Angelica. I
Hi.
just wanted to say thank you for sharing your story with your brothers. You know, I had a brother that went through cancer as well a few years ago, and he's my younger brother, so I understand like the topics you were talking about are somewhat not really touched because it's such a sensitive topic to bring up at the dining room table or like a console. I think just like you know, I've also in working here, I've also seen how important it is for anyone, because, you know, sometimes it may be, for example, my brother, he has a baby, he has a little kid. I think just like honoring those wishes when the situation is not an elderly with, you know, adult kids, but when it's a, you know, a younger person with children, like what do they want for those kids as a wish? Like that to me has like shifted my perspective as to life, and that sometimes you think, you know, death comes upon the elderly, and then you get the situations where, you know, a child or a younger person gets, you know, to go through this, and it's really, it's hard but necessary to have these conversations. And I just want to say thank you for being so courageous to share this in a way that's going to help all of us, help others, and help ourselves. One of the things that I took away from here is that when I create my 5 wishes, or, you know, within that framework, I would like to have music. I'm like, that I was like, oh my God, like that is something that I would really you know, have, and it's so silly, but it's I enjoy music. I don't know, I put music when I'm sleeping. I put music anytime, and it's like I wouldn't want to be in a situation, you know, if I am going through something, I would like to just know that there is something in the background that's keeping my soul somewhat, you know, conscious or unconscious, somewhere in there, accompanied by things like this. And so I appreciate your presentation. It has brought up things that I never thought as a wish. You know, you don't think like, oh, you know, when you said you can have music, it's like, you know, that to me helps me say goodbye better, because I'm saying goodbye. And I say like that because I put myself in, and it gets me very emotional because I know what it means to face death like so close and personal. So to me, knowing that anyone else can choose, you know, little things that may not mean anything to anyone, but it may mean the world to the person, to be able to honor that and to let them know this is what you can do. Like, you know, because everything else just seems very political, like, it like just seems so political, you know, things like that are actually meaningful to a loved one, to me is it was really nice to hear that from you, because I never really heard anyone say something like that. It's always like finances and stuff, which is, you know, part of legal things. But now this was really, really sweet, because I find that humanity behind the process, you know.
Good. Well, I'm glad. And that's funny that you say I'm courageous. I'm just, you know, I'm just have a big mouth, and I'm not, you know, this is just a regular conversation. 2 things that you say. One, the music, that's wonderful. And again, it's not necessarily on the end of life. And, you know, I'm not wishing anything, but if something happens and you're in the hospital unconscious for whatever reason, short term, like, music, that's important to you. So for your healthcare, music, for your soul, for your spirit, music is important. So you want to have music. If there's ever a reason you can't talk for yourself, have music there. And that's important. Just share that. The other thing I was going to say about your brother, you bring up an interesting thing that might help guide the conversation. Your brother has a young child, so it doesn't have to be about for him. You can approach the conversation for your child. What is it that, you know, we're talking about these things so we can make sure we do what's best for you, and therefore what's best for your child, having these things in place. So that's another avenue to the conversation that you can find, taking that pressure off your brother, that these things, you know, it's important to have.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Meg. My name's Erin. I'm the program director at Cancer Support Community New Jersey, and we
wonderful.
would love to have you present to our members. We've done this a couple times in a couple different ways, with an attorney, you know, with a hospice. But I love your message. I think that you're very like down to earth and humbled, obviously, because of your experience. So I'm so sorry for the loss of your brother. And everything your family has gone through. But I do think that, you know, in the world that we're in, when we're supporting cancer patients and families, it's a story like yours that is relatable. And I think that people are more apt to listen and to feel connected to somebody like you. So I would love to talk more offline about having you come, whether it's virtual or in person, and trying to get our members who are going through cancer, you know, to come with their loved ones. We try so hard to like let people know that it's actually like a gift to your family to do all of this and to plan all of this so that they don't have to, make decisions on their own, or so that there isn't, drama between the family members, all of the things that you talked about. And sometimes, like, as important as we know that it is, it's just so hard to get people to come and to listen to it. So I'd be open to hearing kind of your best practices for marketing something like this so that we get people to attend, but I would love to work with you.
That would be great. Sure. And I just want to say, and it's not, it's a common thing. And I just want to say, you said sorry for your loss, and I appreciate that. I just want to say too, from life experiences and perspective and my brother's personal philosophy, in our family, we think no one's gone until you stop talking about them. So in our family, it is not a loss, it's a transition. And that was my brother's philosophy. And again, it's just part of the whole conversation. And I have two great nephews who are named after their great uncle that they do not know, and that my nephews knew, but it's a philosophy. So, but part of that is because we could have some conversations and be honest about it. My brother and I talked about death, not his death, but death in general, and we weren't comfortable with that to talk about it. So that helped deal with that. And also, as anyone knows, a diagnosis of cancer, living with cancer, heightens your awareness of life and living in the moment. And we were able to really do that for about 2 years. So, that was a gift to us.
Yeah, I love that. And I know that it sounds cliche to kind of say, like, as a society, we don't talk about death enough, but we don't. And if you're in this field, you know that, right? Like, everybody knows that. And I think that, as a, cancer support community or Gilda's Club, however you want to refer to us, like, it's part of our job to educate people and to be talking about it, because it's a whole, I don't know the exact percentage, but not everybody lives with cancer forever. And so it is part of the education that I feel like we have a responsibility of doing. And we need, if we're not putting it on the calendar and presenting it, then we're not doing it. So,
I'm happy to, and having these conversations and choosing hospice or palliative care has also been shown, right, to extend maybe only by a couple months, but quality of life, give you a better quality of life, addressing these things. So, yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I'd be happy to talk more.
Thank you. Okay.
I'm so glad you joined, Erin. Thank you for contributing. I'm so glad that you guys are going to make this connection. Anybody else have a question? You can feel free to take yourself off mute or write it in the chat. Okay, I'm going to ask my question. So Meg knows, some of you may know a little bit about my situation with my parents. Both of them are ill. And so we are making a lot of these types of decisions together as a family. And Erin, you mentioned that, sometimes this does create a wedge in between family members, and you have to go through all those considerations. My question though, Meg, is have you ever had a financial component added to a conversation like this? So I find that our family is constantly talking about finances. Well, if we have someone in the home to provide care, it's going to cost X amount of money. If we put dad into a care facility, they're going to take the house. And like, there's probably so many misconceptions around what we're saying. And we're truly not as educated as we should be to be making some of these decisions that you mentioned in your presentation. And like, I feel like finances for us keeps coming up. So any thoughts or insight on that aspect of this decision-making process?
I'm laughing because I'm fortunate in that and that my mother had to go through this with her mother. So it's been transparent ever since I've been, on all the documents for 10 years since, plus since my grandmother, it's more than 10 years past. It's complicated, and I think it's important. So like in our case, because of my grandmother, things were with a financial advisor. So we have a financial advisor involved, which is a big help. So again, it's a little out of my depth because I know I'm unusual and that my mom is transparent about those things. So it can be difficult with the parents. Plus, I'm the only girl. So, there's that with my mom. I don't have to argue with my brothers. I'm just kidding. So, yeah, I have not added a financial component, but that can be tricky, right? When you have multiple children involved too. We went through this with my dad. We weren't in charge of his care. My stepmother was, and it was negotiating that and having these conversations. So I was out of the financial discussions on that. It was out of my depth. I would say if there's any way to get a financial advisor to have that information, and also just the initial, for both my grandmother, I went with my mom to look at assisted livings and just get that idea of what could we afford and what are the possibilities. So maybe doing some of that research or finding someone who can answer. I'm certainly happy to look into that to see if there are people who can help, with the financial aspect of home health care. Because that's a conversation too, right? Long-term health insurance, long-term care. Is it worth it? Is it worth the money? What does it really cover? So those are, I don't know, Jenna, you may have just bought me another topic that I have to research and present on, but I'm happy to look into that. I personally don't know as much because of my situation, but I'm happy to look into it a little bit.
Yeah, and even like just having the financial advisor present or like being part of the discussions would be helpful. But I'm thinking there has to be some financial advisors that like specialize in this type
In
of
this,
arena rather than
yeah,
just, all things finance. So that maybe having some of those resources would be helpful for us too.
helpful. Yeah, so I'll look at the financial, and I'll say that was a conversation, and I believe it was driven by my mother's financial advisor who said, I went in with her. He knows who I am, and we went in and had that just very initial conversation. But that is something too, seeing what you can afford or what things really will cost. It's a lovely
Yeah,
idea to have home health care, but is it possible?
it's so
And it's
hard to
also,
find somebody,
it's
and it's
hard to
so
find
hard to find
someone.
someone affordable. So those are two
And then,
barriers that we constantly face.
right. And then you may find someone that's affordable, but it's also, the 24 hours care by one person that's living in the house. And that seems, I know some situations like that where it's a home health care person, and it's one person that's living there and they're there 7 days a week. Maybe they get a break once every now and then. And, that may or may not be the best situation. And
Yeah,
it's also in terms of what can you handle in your house? If you have home health care, is there somewhere that you can go? Sarah, is there somewhere that you can go? Can you put a hospital bed in your house? What's the
right.
reality of the design of your house? So, yeah, but
Yeah,
you've
we're
given me
we're
something to think
going
about.
through
I'll work
some
on
of
that.
those things now where like we have somebody that's in the house 4 days a week, but then the 3 days we don't have another
Right.
person to switch on and off. So there are a lot of different barriers that come along with that. And then there was a part two to what I was gonna say about care and finances. Oh, so we're doing a lot of if this, then that. So I really liked your emphasis on having multiple people that can kind of make these decisions and sign off because we're in a situation where right now my mom is cancer free, thankfully. But she's making a lot of these decisions on behalf of my dad. And we're saying, as the three kids, mom, we really need to be part of these discussions for dad because if you're not here one day, what do you want us to, and of course, my dad, stroke survivor, nonverbal, can't express the things that we need to hear from him. So we're like, we need to be able to make these decisions for dad in your absence. So a lot of if this, then that. And I think it is a great thing that you said, have multiple people on that proxy, whatever decisions you want made, multiple
It
people
can
should know
be.
it.
And even if he's nonverbal, if he can communicate with you, there can be yes or no, type questions, or if that's possible. But yeah, it is important, and it is important to have those conversations with your mom and understand. And maybe these documents can be a guideline too. You know, if how does he feel about this particular situation? Yeah,
And I'm lucky I get to say at work today, this is what I learned. And that's my way of
perfect.
bringing it up to say, these are the discussions we need to be having.
Perfect.
So yeah,
Yeah,
but thank you.
yeah,
I appreciate
yeah.
all this information is so helpful. I wrote down some of your resources. I took a picture of some of them, and I guess some people are asking, will this be available afterwards? And can we get a copy of
Yeah.
your PowerPoint just to have
I
those
can save the
resources?
PowerPoint as a PDF, and it's got all the active links in there. So I'm happy to do that and send it to you, Jenna, and you can send it out. Sure.
Okay. Will do.
And I should put my contact information in the chat. Please feel free to contact me for any questions. And in general, check out the Elixir Fund. We have some supportive resources as well. So we offer a guided meditation if you need to relax after you've had this conversation. Feel free to join us. But thank you all for coming, and thank you for being a part of this.
Yeah, no, thank you, Meg, for doing it with us. I'm going to give one last call for questions, and then I'm going to give a quick update about something else we're doing with Meg in August.
Okay. Oh, and the question asks, can this training be provided in Spanish? I'm happy to work with someone. My Spanish is not good enough, but I'm happy to work with someone if you want to do this and translate in Spanish.
Angie, is that something you'd be up for if we were going to do it again and do it with
Absolutely.
the Spanish spin?
Yes, when you share the presentation, I can go ahead and translate it so we can have the visuals. And you go ahead and speak, and it'll be like a conversation, you know.
Okay.
Your presence is, you know, you're the expert. All I would do is just have that conversation and have the participants or the community get engaged, you know, to ask you the questions themselves, because it elicits a lot of questions when speaking to, especially the Hispanic community. They don't really get to have this conversation. So when it does get brought up, they have a lot of questions, and I know they like to find out, and so they appreciate it, whichever, you know, getting the support and knowing that someone is speaking up about this, and this can be provided in Spanish. It's very appreciated. So yes, absolutely.
Wonderful. And the question came up, are the resources also in Spanish version? I will check on that. Some of them are, but I will check. And now you've just made me tip off to look for resources that are in Spanish. So I will look into that.
Yes, thank you everybody for your feedback in the chat. These are all helpful things for us to know about.
Absolutely.
And you know what, Jenna, for you, I do have some resources with companies that do end of life, and all these other different companies that I'm aware of, and another aspect of life that I can provide you and see if they can do presentations for us, because I do know financial advisors and companies that talk about how to have plans in case you have a stroke and you survive the stroke. Because a lot of times certain financial plans allow you to kind of prepare for that, so you can have the income, the money available to have the care, you know. And when the finances is a big, you know, part of health, staying healthy, keeping healthy, or taking care of our loved ones when we are either stroke survivors or heart attack survivors, it takes a toll on the family. And knowing at a young age how to handle that with our budgeting, it's very important, because we don't want to end up in a situation. So there are companies that I know of that do this kind of things, and I can ask them to do presentations for us, Jenna, and more input will, you know, follow through. So there are companies that specialize in this thing, you know, financial advisors that specialize in this type of stuff that can kind of give us an education how it all works.
Yeah, and I know that, thank you for saying that, Angie. I know Meg is part, or actually maybe the chair of the survivorship work group at the DOH state level, and to have this list would be helpful. She's compiling a list of all survivorship resources, and so to have these to add to that would be great.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, Tracy, that's so nice that you said that. Phenomenal
Yes.
presentation.
Thank you,
So sincere and truthful. Yes. Yes. Meg always is. It's nice. Okay. I'm going to just wrap us up quickly. We're at about 3 minutes till time. And I just wanted to take everybody through another opportunity that you'll have to be incorporated into something else that we're going to be doing with Meg at the Elixir Fund, as well as the Center State team in Freehold. So, you know, we work on things together, all things survivorship. And this partnership will be an interactive discussion between us as providers, survivors and patients, cancer survivors and patients, and 2 doctors, an oncologist and a family medicine doc from CentraState. And really the inspiration for this idea is that after a cancer diagnosis, whether somebody's in treatment or after treatment is complete, when they have a medical issue, challenge, question, who are they calling? Are they calling their oncology team? Are they calling their primary care team? And so we'd love to hear that from the survivor's perspective, the patient's perspective, but also from the oncology and the primary care teams too. So this is going to be like a survivorship roundtable almost. It's going to be a relaxed setting with open discussion where each respective person can hear from the other and see what we come up with. This is going to be a pilot for us. Maybe we might do these regularly, but really to have those open discussions is very important. And we're going to hope to do that with CentraState as a partner. So it's going to be on August 22nd from 10 to 12 at CentraState in their boardroom. More information to come. We don't even have a flyer done yet. But I just at least wanted to mention it to this group because there is obviously some interest in survivorship resources.
And we're right now working on recruiting. We need the patient perspective. So we really want to get patients. So if you work with anyone, if you know, again, it's really kind of in the continuum of care, but this really sort of was inspired by people who are sort of a year post-treatment or, they've been released by their oncologist. It doesn't mean someone in treatment can't be part of it, but it's sort of when you're released by your oncologist, where do you go? Some people don't even have a primary care physician. So, and this will be a discussion, not a presentation by the doctors. This is a buy-in on everybody's parts, and we really want to hear.
Could I invite my brother, Jenna, by any chance?
Oh, of course, yes. Please do. I'm going to invite my mom.
Please.
So yeah, for anybody that's here that knows somebody that, is a survivor that would be willing to share their experience and their feedback, we would love to invite them. And so we can keep everybody posted when we have a flyer.
And there'll be refreshments of some kind.
Yeah, of some kind. We'll figure all that out.
Figure
We don't know what that
out,
looks
but
like
there'll be some
yet.
food, some drink, whatever.
Yeah, so come hang out with us on August 22nd from 10 to 12 if you can. And thank you again, Meg. We so appreciate your time today. And everybody have a great day. We'll talk soon.
Bye-bye.